Disclaimer. Prologue. Theodoro had attended 100 weddings he didn't want to be at. This one was no different. Marco was a good employee, loyal, sharp, never late. When the invitation landed on Theodoro's desk, declining wasn't really an option. You show up for the people who show up for you. That was the rule. So, he came. Suit pressed, expression neutral, prepared to stay exactly for 1 hour. He was scanning the room for Marco when he heard it. A woman's voice, bright, practiced, the kind that knew how to hold the crowd, above the music and the clinking of glasses. You are going to end up single. Some women just do. It's all right. Laughter followed. Easy, comfortable laughter. The kind that was supposed to be funny but actually hurt. Theodoro turned toward the noise. The bride was at the center of the room, champagne flute in hand, smiling at someone near the far wall. He followed her gaze past the crowd, past the tables drowning in white flowers, and he saw her face. His next step never came. He knew that face. Uffizi, 2 days ago, a painting tucked in a corner that nobody had bothered to stop for. They both had stopped, and for nearly an hour they had argued, actually argued, like two people who both had something real to say. He never got her name. He hadn't stopped thinking about her since. Theodoro forgot about Marco, forgot about staying for an hour. He set his glass down on the nearest table and started moving through the crowd towards her. Chapter 1. The Pre-Wedding Escape. Florence in the morning was a different city. Before the tourists arrived with their maps and their noise, before the restaurants pushed their menus onto the sidewalks, the streets were quiet and golden and smelled like bread and old stone. Violet had slipped out of the hotel at 8, before Harper could find her with a new task, a new opinion, a new reason why the centerpieces still were not right. She had 2 days before the wedding. 2 days of being told how to stand, what to wear, how to smile, how to exist in a way that did not embarrass the family. 2 days of Harper looking at her like she was a problem that needed managing. It was not new, but something about being in another country, in a city this beautiful, made it sting differently. Like being handed a masterpiece and told you were not allowed to look at it properly. The Uffizi opened at 8:15. Violet was at the door the second it opened. She did not need a mirror to know what she looked like. A full-figured black woman in a burnt orange wrap dress, natural hair pinned up loose, no tour group, no guidebook, no man on her arm. A few people glanced at her when she walked in. She was used to that. She moved through it the way she always did. Chin level, steps unhurried, and let the art do the rest. She moved through the first few paintings slowly. Not reading the placards, she knew most of them already, just looking, letting her eyes settle where they felt like. Back in Phoenix, she spent her days curating exhibits for people who sometimes barely glanced at what she had spent months preparing. Here, nobody needed her to perform. Nobody needed anything from her at all. That thought sat quietly in her chest, and it felt embarrassingly close to relief. That is how she found it. A small painting in a corner near the end of the third gallery. No crowd around it, no bench positioned in front of it for quiet contemplation, just a frame on a wall that most people walked past without slowing down, their attention already pulled toward the bigger, louder works at the center of the room. Violet stopped. It was a woman at a window. That was all, technically. A woman with her back mostly turned, looking out at something the artist had left deliberately unclear. The light came from the left. Her hands rested on the sill, relaxed, but not quite. There was something in the tension of her shoulders, something the painter had caught and most people had missed. She was waiting, but she wasn't sure what for. Violet understood that more than she wanted to. The light is wrong. She turned. A man was standing about 2 feet to her left, arms crossed, looking at the painting with a slight frown. Dark suit, no museum badge, not a tourist. Tourists did not frown at paintings, they photographed them. He was tall, dark-haired, with the kind of face that looked like it did not do casual very often. "Excuse me?" Violet said. "The light." He nodded at the canvas. "It is coming from the left, but her shadow falls straight back. The painter made an error." Violet looked at the painting, then back at him.
"He did not make an error," she said. "There are two light sources. You are only looking at one." The man's frown shifted slightly. Not gone, just different. "There's one window." "In the painting, yes, but look at the warmth on her right shoulder." Violet pointed, not touching the canvas, just directing this stranger. "That's not coming from the window. That's late afternoon sun from outside the frame entirely. He painted a moment that exists just before the main light changes. The shadow's accurate. You're just not seeing the whole scene." Silence. The man looked at the painting for a long moment and considered her point. He had that look that meant he was actually listening, not just waiting for her to finish. "That is a generous interpretation," he said finally. "It is the correct one," she corrected. He glanced at her then. Something shifted in his expression. Not quite a smile, not quite a challenge. Somewhere between the two. "You sound very certain for someone standing in front of a painting with no signature." Unsigned doesn't mean unskilled. It usually means the opposite. The ones who didn't need the credit were the ones who had the most to say. Or they were ashamed of it. "Look at the hands." She nodded at the canvas again. "Does that look like shame to you?" He looked. The woman's hands on the windowsill, relaxed, deliberate, unhurried, belonging exactly where they were. "No," he said quietly. "I suppose it does not." They stood there for a moment, both looking at the same painting, the gallery quiet around them. Violet was aware that she didn't know this man, that she had just argued with a complete stranger for nearly an hour in a foreign country, and that she did not regret a single word of it. Something about the ease of it, the sharpness of it, felt more like herself than anything had in days. More like herself than Harper had let her be in years. "She's not waiting," the man said suddenly. Violet glanced. "What?" He tilted his head slightly. "I don't think she's waiting. I think she already made her decision. Whatever was outside that window, she already chose it. This is just the last moment before she moves." Violet looked at the painting again. Her chest did something quiet and unexpected, because he wasn't wrong. "That is a generous interpretation," she said. He looked at her, and for the first time in their conversation, something close to a real smile crossed his face. "It is the correct one," he said. And that was it. Violet laughed before she could stop herself. Short, genuine, the kind that escapes before you decide to let it. He did not introduce himself. She did not ask. He looked at the painting one more time, then straightened his jacket and walked back the way he came. Unhurried, no explanation, like the conversation had simply reached its natural end. Violet turned back to the painting. The woman at the window looked exactly the same as before, but somehow she looked different now too. Violet stood there another 10 minutes, alone, thinking about a woman who had already made her decision and a stranger who saw it before she did. She did not get his name. She did not stop thinking about him either. Chapter 2. The Uninvited Guest. Theodoro had not planned to stay long. He was already calculating his exit when he heard her voice, the bride's. Bright and practiced and aimed at someone across the room dressed up as a joke. Laughter followed. Easy, comfortable laughter. The kind that meant everyone had already picked a side. Theodoro turned toward the noise. The bride was at the center of the room, champagne flute in hand, smiling at someone near the far wall. He followed her gaze past the crowd, past the tables drowning in white flowers, and he saw her face. His next step never came. He knew that face. The Uffizi, 2 days ago, a painting tucked in a corner that nobody had bothered to stop for. And for nearly an hour they had argued, like two people who both had something real to say. He never got her name. He had not stopped thinking about her since, and he regretted not asking her out for coffee. Now she was standing against a marble pillar in a dress that held every curve of her like it had been made for exactly that purpose. Full-figured, unhurried, her dark skin warm against the cold white of the ballroom. Natural hair pinned up soft at the crown. A glass of Prosecco held loosely in one hand. She was not performing comfort. She simply had it, somewhere deep, in a way the rest of the room did not. The bride was still talking. Some women choose books over people and then wonder why they eat alone. More laughter. Louder this time. Theodoro watched the woman by the pillar. She took a slow sip of her drink, did not look away, did not shrink, just absorbed it. The way you absorb something you had already survived 100 times before. He had spent years learning to recognize quality in soil, in grapes, in people. You could not fake it and you could not manufacture it. It was either there or it was not. Because he had seen that look before, not on a person, but on a painting. A woman at a window who had already made her decision and was simply waiting for the world to catch up. He had argued with this woman for an hour about what that painting meant. He had walked away thinking about her for 2 days straight. And now the bride was using a room full of Italy's elite to take her apart, piece by piece, while she stood there and refused to break. He set his glass down. A man to his left touched his arm. Theodoro, the Marchettis are here, you should... Later. He started moving through the crowd. The bride saw him first. He watched the moment it registered, the smile widening, the posture changing, the immediate pivot of her entire body toward him. She moved with her arms already opening, radiant, prepared to make him part of her evening. Theodoro, I did not know you were... He nodded once, kept walking. The bride stopped. The room noticed. Everyone watched the most powerful man in Florence walk past the bride at her own wedding reception without breaking his stride. The music kept playing. Nobody spoke. The silence had a texture to it, sharp and confused and waiting. He reached the far wall, reached the marble pillar, reached the woman who was only now looking up, slowly, like she wasn't sure what she was about to find. She found him. For a moment, neither of them said anything. The noise of the reception carried on around them, and she looked at him the same way she had looked at that painting 2 days ago, like she was deciding what was actually there before she committed to an interpretation. You, she said. Me, he said. Across the room, the bride had not moved. Her smile was still in place, but her eyes had gone very still. Chapter 3. The King's Rebuttal. Violet still had not moved. She was not sure her legs were working properly. The man from the Uffizi was standing 2 feet in front of her in the middle of her sister's wedding reception, looking at her like the tons of guests around them were simply not there, and she had absolutely no framework for what was happening. I did not expect to see you here or anywhere else if I'm being honest, she said. It was the most neutral thing she could find. My employee is the groom, he said, and I did not expect to see you either, but here we are. Here we are. She turned that over quietly. The ballroom was still buzzing around them. She could feel it, the shift in attention, the whispered questions moving table to table. She did not look away from him to check. Harper arrived before she could say anything else. She came fast, gliding through the crowd with her wedding dress and her wide smile and the particular energy of a woman who had just watched something happen that she had not authorized. Theodoro! Harper touched his arm lightly, inserting herself into the space between them with the smoothness of long practice. Congratulations on your wedding, Harper. Thank you. I am so glad you came. Marco and I were just talking about you. She laughed, warm and effortless. I see you have met my sister. We have met, he said. He did not look at Harper. Something in Harper's smile tightened at the edges, just slightly. Violet is our family academic. She said it like she was happy for her. She curates museums back in Phoenix. Very serious work, very quiet life. She laughed again, softer this time, an invitation for him to laugh with her. He did not laugh. Violet kept her face neutral. She had years of practice at this, standing still while Harper repackaged her into something smaller, something manageable, something that did not threaten the room Harper wanted to own. She had learned a long time ago that reacting was exactly what Harper wanted, and she didn't feel like giving in to Harper. So she stood, and she waited. I apologize on her behalf. She must have cornered you. Harper continued. her voice dropping just enough to signal confidence, sisterly exasperation. She does that with art. Once she starts, you cannot really get away. She tilted her head toward Violet with a look that said gently, "You are embarrassing yourself." "I am sure Theodoro has people he needs to speak to, Violet." The room was listening. Violet could feel it. She took a breath, set her Prosecco glass down on the nearest surface, prepared, in the quiet way she always prepared, to excuse herself with her dignity intact. "That won't be necessary. She did not corner me." "Sorry?" "Your sister." Theodoro silently looked at Harper, brief, direct, the way you looked at something that required minimal attention. "She did not corner me. We met 2 days ago at the Uffizi. I have been trying to find her since. I am lucky to run into her here." The silence that followed was a different kind of silence than before. Violet looked at him. He had been looking for her. Since the museum. She kept her face still, but her grip on nothing tightened. She had already set her glass down, and her hands had nowhere to go, which was somehow worse. Harper recovered fast. She always did that. One would think you was her superpower. Well, how lovely. The smile was back, adjusted, recalibrated. Violet is very knowledgeable about art, very passionate about the things most people miss. Theodoro said, "Yes, I know." He said it simply, no performance, no edge, just a fact he had already filed away and was now returning it to its owner. Harper opened her mouth, closed it. For the first time in Violet's memory, her sister had nothing to add. Theodoro turned back to Violet. "You were telling me at the Uffizi that unsigned work is often the most honest. For some reason, I can't stop thinking about that." Violet felt something loosen in her chest. And I think you were right. The ones who do not need the credit usually have the most to say. A pause. "I have a vineyard outside Florence. There are paintings in the house that nobody has properly looked at in years. I would like someone to look at them." She understood what he was doing. He was not asking her on a date. He was offering her a door, one she could walk through on her own terms, for her own reasons, with her own expertise leading the way. It was the most careful thing anyone had offered her in a long time. "I am only in Florence for a few days," she said. "I know," he said. "That is why I'm asking now." Behind him, Harper stood with her champagne flute and her recalibrated smile and her wedding dress and said absolutely nothing. Violet looked at the man from the Uffizi. Then she picked up her Prosecco glass from the table where she had set it down. "Tell me about the vineyard," she said. Chapter 4. The Freedom. She had slipped away quietly, telling him she needed a moment, leaving the vineyard conversation half finished on purpose, something to come back to. Violet had been in the stall for less than 2 minutes when the bathroom door swung open. She recognized Harper's laugh first, then the click of heels, multiple pairs, and the particular high energy of women who had been drinking champagne since noon and felt untouchable. Violet stayed still, door locked, said nothing. "Did you see his face when she started talking?" One of Harper's friends. Violet did not know her name. Like she was the most interesting person in the room. "Give it an hour," Harper said. The sound of a bag unzipping. Lipstick, probably. Men like Theodoro Ferrero do not end up with women like Violet. They get curious, that is all. She looked so serious standing there. That dress! "I know," Harper laughed, light and easy. "She has never known how to dress for a room. She dresses for herself, very Violet." A pause. "She's going to go back to Phoenix and tell everyone she met some Italian man at my wedding and he was interested, and that will be the most exciting thing that has happened to her in years." More laughter, comfortable, the kind built over years of saying these things unchallenged. "You do not feel bad?" Another voice, younger, less certain. For what? Harper said. For telling the truth? Violet has always thought she was better than everyone because she reads more, because she knows things about old paintings nobody cares about. She has wasted her best years in a museum talking to walls, and she's going to die alone and she will still think she was right. A beat. I love my sister, but some people choose their life and then act surprised when it is lonely. Violet sat with that for a moment. She had heard versions of this her whole life, softer versions in front of their parents, sharper ones late at night when Harper thought she could not hear. But this one had a finality to it that the others did not. This was not cruelty anymore. This was just what Harper believed. Violet unlocked the stall door and walked out. Harper turned from the mirror, lipstick in hand, and for one unguarded second, her face showed exactly what she felt. Not guilt, calculation. How much did she hear? How bad is this? Violet! Don't. Violet walked to the sink, turned on the tap, steady. I heard everything. We were just talking about the fact that I was going to die alone. Violet turned off the tap and faced her. You said the most exciting thing that will ever happen to me is meeting a man at your wedding. You said I talked to walls. She reached for a towel. In front of your friends on your wedding day. That is not just talking, Harper. That is what you think of me. Harper's friends had gone very still. I've spent my whole life trying to be enough for you. Enough to defend. Enough to just... She set the towel down and picked up her clutch. You know what? I'm done with that. I'm done showing up hoping this time will be different. So you're just done with me? Just like that? Just like that, Violet said quietly. She looked at Harper one last time. What she found was someone who had needed her to be small for so long that she had built her whole sense of herself around it. Violet felt nothing collapse, nothing break, just the quiet of a decision finally made. Enjoy your wedding, Harper, she said, and walked out. The hallway was cool and empty. Violet stood in it for exactly 3 seconds, breathing, before she squared her shoulders and walked back toward the ballroom. Theodoro was near the entrance, speaking to someone. He saw her before she reached him. She watched him end the conversation mid-sentence, the way you end something when something more important arrived. He looked at her face, did not ask what happened. Instead, he reached for a passing waiter's tray, lifted 2 fresh glasses of Prosecco, and held one out to her. The painting, he said quietly. The woman at the window. You said she had already made her decision. Yes, Violet said. You look like her right now. Violet took the glass, and for the first time all evening, she smiled. Not the smile she kept ready for rooms like this one, but the real one, the one she did not hand out easily. Across the ballroom, Harper had returned from the bathroom. She stood at the edge of the dance floor in her white dress, watching. Violet did not look back. Chapter 5. Independence in Phoenix. Violet landed in Phoenix on a Tuesday and was back at her desk by Wednesday morning. Her colleagues asked how the wedding was. She said fine. Nobody pushed. She had hung her coat on the back of her chair, settled her full figure into her desk seat, and pulled up her emails like Florence had never happened. She did not tell them about the hot Italian man she met. What was there to tell anyway? She had met a man at the Uffizi. They had argued about a painting, and she had spent every second since then thinking about him. 2 days later, she met him, and he walked across a ballroom and sat with her for 3 hours, talking about vineyards and restoration and the kind of art that never made it into textbooks. He had listened to her and wasn't bored by what she had to say, and was genuinely interested and not just waiting for his turn to speak. And then she had flown home, because that was always the plan. Italy was not her life. The Phoenix Museum of Art was her life. The Remington collection she had spent 8 months sourcing was her life. The junior curator she was mentoring, the grant proposal due in December, the exhibit on West African textiles she had been quietly building for 2 years, that was her life. She was good at it. That had always been enough. Most days it still was. She thought about him on Thursday when she passed a small, unsigned oil painting in the storage archive, one nobody had properly cataloged. She stopped in front of it the way she had stopped in front of the painting at the Uffizi, and for a second she heard his voice. That is a generous interpretation. And her own voice back. It is the correct one. She cataloged the painting and moved on. Harper called on Friday. Violet let it go to voicemail. She was not ready for that conversation, and she was not going to pretend she was. Whatever came next with her sister would come on Violet's timeline, not Harper's guilt cycle. That was new. It felt right. Her friend Dana took her to dinner on Saturday. Dana asked about Florence the way Dana asked about everything. Direct, no filter, already leaning forward before Violet had finished her first sentence. "So you just left?" Dana said. "I live here, Dana. People move. I am not moving to Italy for a man I just met days ago." Violet. Dana. Dana sat back and looked at her the way she had looked at her since they were 19, like she could see the thing Violet was not saying. "Did you give him your number?" Violet picked up her wine glass. He did not ask. "Did you offer?" The least you could do was give him your number so you guys could keep in touch. She had not. She had thought about it, standing in the ballroom at the end of the night, their last conversation winding down the way good conversations did, neither of them rushing it, but both of them aware it was ending. She had thought about it and then she had not done it, and she had told herself that was the right call. She was still telling herself that. 4 days, Violet said. It was a good 4 days. That is allowed to just be what it was. Whatever happened in Italy stays in Italy. Dana did not look convinced, but she let it go. That was also why she kept her around. The weeks settled into their rhythm. The Remington collection opened to strong reviews. The grant proposal went in on time. The West African textile exhibit got approved. 2 years of quiet work suddenly real, suddenly scheduled, suddenly hers in a way that made her stand in her office for a full minute just absorbing it. This was the life she had built, on her own terms, in her own city with her own expertise leading the way. She thought about what Theodoro had said at the vineyard conversation that never quite finished, about the paintings in his house that nobody had properly looked at in years, about wanting her to look at them. She went back to work and tried to forget about it. Chapter 6. The Man Who Crossed the Ocean. Violet was in the middle of installing the West African textile exhibit when her assistant knocked on the gallery door and said there was a man at the front desk asking for her. She did not look up from the display case. "Tell him to make an appointment." "He says he came from Italy." Violet looked up. She set down the mounting tool, took off her gloves, told herself that Italy was a country of 60 million people and this could be anyone. It was not anyone. Theodoro was standing in the main lobby in a dark coat, hands in his pockets, looking at the exhibit banner on the far wall the way he had looked at the painting at the Uffizi, like he was actually reading it, not just waiting. Violet stopped in the doorway. "Theodore? How did you find me?" He turned. "Your sister." That landed somewhere complicated. Harper had given him this. After everything, after the bathroom, after the ballroom, after all of it, Harper had given him this. She was surprised. Violet did not know what to do with that yet, so she filed it away for later. "You left before I could ask for your number." "You came from Italy to ask for my number?" "You could have emailed." "I could have," he said, "but I wanted to see you and see where you work." Violet looked at him for a moment. Then she stepped aside and gestured toward the gallery behind her. "Then come and see it." She walked him through the exhibit the way she walked anyone through it, slowly, no rushing, letting each piece speak before she added anything. The textiles were extraordinary. 2 years of work, of sourcing and negotiating and writing grant proposals at midnight, all of it now on the walls of her museum, in her city, telling stories that deserved to be told. Theodoro did not perform interest. He just had it. He stopped where she stopped, asked questions that showed he had actually been listening. At one point, he stood in front of a piece for so long that a passing visitor assumed he was a curator too. Violet noticed. She did not say anything. At the end of the gallery, they stopped near the window. Phoenix spread out behind the glass, flat and golden, and nothing like Florence. "This is what you built," he said to her. "2 years of it," she said with pride. "It is extraordinary." He said it the way he said everything, simply, without decoration. "You were right at the Uffizi. The ones who do not need the credit are usually the ones with the most to say." He looked at her. "You clearly have a lot to say." Violet felt the same thing she had felt in the ballroom when he handed her a fresh glass and said nothing. That ease. The particular comfort of being seen by someone who was not trying to manage what they saw. "Why are you really here?" she said. "You didn't cross an ocean for a woman you barely know." "What if I tell you I did?" A pause. "And I did not cross it for a moment. I crossed it for the person." Violet looked at him. Outside, a school group was filing through the entrance, their voices carrying faintly through the glass. Her museum, her exhibit, her city. "I am not moving to Italy," she said. "I know. I have a life here, a career, an exhibit that opens in 3 weeks. I know that too." "So what exactly are you proposing?" Theodoro was quiet for a second. "I am proposing that we finish the conversation we started in Florence, the one about the vineyard, the paintings nobody has looked at properly." He tilted his head slightly. "I have a plane. You have expertise. We can figure out the rest as we go. We do not have to figure everything out right now." Violet looked at him for a long moment, the same way she had looked at the painting, trying to find what was actually there before she committed to an interpretation. What she found was someone who had crossed an ocean not to rescue her, not to claim her, but simply to continue a conversation that neither of them had been ready to end. "The exhibit opens in 3 weeks. Would you like to come?" she said. "I will be here." Violet picked up her gloves from the display case where she had left them, put them back on, turned back to the exhibit she had spent 2 years building. "Then make yourself useful," she said. "Hand me that mounting tool." "Yes, ma'am." Theodoro picked it up without hesitation and held it to her. Violet smiled, the real one, the one she did not hand out easily, and got back to work. She was happy he was here. They could figure out everything else later. There was no need to do that now. The end. Thank you for staying till the end. My team and I appreciate you. This feels like it should have a part 2, right? If we get enough comments from you guys, we just might write it. Please subscribe to the channel for more stories. We're just getting started.